So in this video, I wanted to come up with a quick solution on how you can create your own custom sound. In this video, I want to use the example of string libraries. So how to create your own custom sound out of commercial libraries. So by now, you are probably one of these composers who already own several string libraries. And I get asked very often, what do you think about this string library in comparison to this string library? And when it comes to deciding what sounds I want to use, I got rid of this replacing attitude, so that I want to replace an older string library with a newer one. And what I find way more interesting is to layer your existing libraries and create some kind of your own custom sound. Now let's do this. So we're right now in my new template here, at least on the string section. And for this example, I want to use the violins 1 legato patches here. So I open up that contact instance, and as you can see, there are 3 libraries hosted inside the same contact instance. And this is not about a multi-timbral setup. I just want to use the same MIDI channel so that I can just play a single line and trigger several libraries at once. So the first thing you may want to notice is that I'm routing all of these libraries out to the same MIDI channel. So it's all MIDI channel 1. So I simply connect this A from host MIDI channel 1. So all of these libraries are connected now to MIDI channel 1. And you can see that I loaded the cinematic studio strings, the first violins, also the first violins. It's all legato patches, also the first violins of Berlin strings, and also the first violins, or the 16 violins patch, legato patch of Nucleus by Audio Imperia. So when I just play you a few notes here, you can hear that I trigger all of these libraries. So let's listen to all of these libraries one by one so you get a better understanding of what is going on here. So the first would be to listen, or let's mute these. Listen to cinematic studio strings right now. Now let's listen to Berlin strings. And last but not least, let's listen to Nucleus. And now let's start layering cinematic studio strings. I'm just using the highest dynamics here. And add Berlin strings. And now add Nucleus. And this is basically it. So this is what I tend to do with almost every, let's say, orchestral sound, basically, because it makes most sense to do this on orchestral samples. I like to create my individual sections. You could also introduce some first chair sections or solo strings, and then you can head over and apply some EQ, what I will simply show you right now. When I hop over and open the EQ for my string section right here. So what I showed many times in live streams and previous videos, that I just like to add or get rid of a TED of around 4 kilohertz to give you a little bit of that, you know, smoother string sound. So let's listen to this. And now let's listen to this without EQ. So you can hear that it sounds a little bit more silky, a little bit more smooth. And I think this is the reason why so many tracks, especially with high legato strings, sound a little bit MIDI-ish. I believe it's more of a sound thing rather than a programming thing. And of course, you always want to make sure that you use lots of dynamics in your phrases. So I just want to add a tad of reverb, and what I'm using here is Cinematic Rooms, the professional version, and I just dialed in some orchestra hall here. So let's listen to how this sounds right now. So the next thing I want to talk about is one more step, and actually this is pretty interesting to hear or to see, however you want to put it. If you just listen to Cinematic Studio Strings on its own, if you have the library, you know that you can trigger the kind of a portamento effect when you hit the velocities really low. So you introduce a little bit of a slide. And I know that you can make this way more realistic when you use the advanced legato mode, but I just don't want to get into that right now. So again, with velocity settings very low, so I'm hitting the keys very soft. And the funny thing is with Berlin strings, it's exactly the other way around. So if you hit the keys hard, you hear like a little portamento effect introduced, but now the funny thing is when you layer all these libraries together, you get some kind of a mix out of portamento and, let's say, normal or traditional legato articulation, and it sounds like this. So I'm hitting the keys very soft right now. Now I try to hit them a little bit harder, so you hear all of the legato articulations and no portamento. Softer. And now harder, and this will trigger the portamento effect of Berlin strings. But all the other libraries, all the other two libraries, will play normal legato or traditional legato. So this kind of mixes up the entire thing and creates some kind of custom articulations too. And to me personally, it sounds a little bit more realistic because all of the string players have their own unique way of playing this legato effect. Okay, I think you get the idea of what's happening here. Let me just quickly show you the second violins and what I did here. So I mixed Cinematic Studio Strings again, then the second violins of Berlin strings, but also the minimalist violins too, legato patches of afflato strings. So let's listen to this one by one. And please keep in mind, I got the reverb activated. So Cinematic Studio Strings added with Berlin strings. And now we add afflato strings. So let's listen to them one by one, afflato strings. Now with Berlin strings. And now with Cinematic Studio Strings. And I already tried to mix up a little bit of the articulations again, so you hear mixed portamento and legato. So you can clearly hear that when I mix these three libraries and also the portamento and legato articulations, that it kind of creates a unique way of how the entire section sounds. It seems that it creates all of these kind of little mistakes which happen during a performance. Okay, so I think the concept is clear. Let me quickly show you what's happening with violas here. So again, I used cinematic studio strings here. I used Berlin strings again, and I used the minimalist violas legato patch by Afflato strings, which is by Stretsov sampling. And let's listen to these patches. Let's listen to these quickly one by one. Cinematic studio strings first. Sorry. With Berlin strings. And with Afflato strings. Okay, next up would be the cellos. Again, I used cinematic studio strings, then Berlin strings, and then the Nucleus cello legato patch here. And it sounds like this. And last but not least, contrabasses. So I used the first chair bass legato patch by Afflato strings, then Berlin strings again, the basses legato, and the double basses legato. No, so the sustain patch by Nucleus. So let's see how this sounds. So there may be a little bit of an overlap happening because I use the sustain patch here, but I don't mind personally when I have two legato libraries happening here. Okay, so I hope that this video and this concept made a little bit of sense to you. We all spent time EQing our sections. We all spent time mixing and mastering and trying to create our individual and custom sound. And I think by using this concept, you can make it even more custom or even more individual. So as always, if you have some questions popping up, feel free to use the comment section below. I will do my best to answer all of your questions. Also, let me know what you like, what you didn't like of this video. I'm really happy to hear from you guys. For now, thank you for your time watching this video and see you on the next one.